meet my friend Brian. Okay.
Hi, Brian.
Brian and I went to graduate school together many moons ago.
Many, many moons.
So Brian will tell you a little bit more about his own story, but he's involved in our life now. He is on the board for Grace Holistic Center for Education. He is, we all say the therapist kind of needs a therapist also. He's the one that I go to when I have, therapeutic questions that I can't handle on my own. I'm just super excited to have him here today to begin your teacher training weekend. He has a lot of insight. He does lectures all over the world. That's something I'm really not good at, speaking in front of public. So
You're doing great right now.
Yeah.
Well, I just taught class, so I'm kind of like...
You're in the zone.
Oh my God! It just came to my awareness that I'm speaking in front of public. So now I'm scared. So I will let Brian tell you about himself, and casual. If you need to get up, get up. Don't suffer through and you can use the washroom or move around, or if you're hungry, go get something to eat. So, and please, if you have questions, ask. All right.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I have to start off by saying that you are my kind of people. I'm seeing tattoos everywhere. I'm seeing everybody relaxed. People just having an ordinary experience in an ordinary life. And that's ultimately what it's about. Somebody approached me beforehand saying, should we take notes? You can if you want to. But I am audio recording this. And I'm happy to share that recording with you. We'll connect afterwards, okay? One thing to frame our conversation here is to understand that it's not about me, it's about we. It's our journey. So we are going to explore what it means to be mindful together. We're going to have a conversation. How's that sound?
Good.
So I know that you were here earlier for yoga. What compelled you to stay? Teacher training. So is there so there's a mandatory aspect, but nobody told you.
I came just for you.
Wow.
I was so impressed by your speech at the fundraiser. I had to
Oh, you were there. So you, my friend, are now the head of my entourage.
I can be bodyguard too.
You can pick it up. Yeah, my bodyguard is whatever I fall into. Usually it's a wall or something. So absolutely, it'd be my pleasure to have you. When you were having your experience during Terry's very energetic yoga class, where was your attention?
Body.
Breathing. Trying to breathe. Trying to breathe.
Trying to breathe. Well, considering the fact that you're conscious, I'd say you were successful.
Yeah.
So, did anybody else have a different focus when they were going through the yoga class?
Trying to keep up.
Trying to keep up with
The flow, the group as a whole.
Trying to keep up with the flow. Were you successful?
Here and there.
Here and there. So, your attention kind of waxed and waned. Sometimes you were more present than others. Does that mean you're doing attention correctly or incorrectly?
Whatever
Just
it is.
is.
Just is.
There is no wrong.
They're correct.
When you think of the term mindfulness, what does that mean to you?
Being
Being
present
aware.
in the moment.
Being aware, being present in the moment,
Feeling your feelings.
Right.
feeling your feelings,
Being conscious.
conscious. A lot of different words. They all point in the same direction. So if you're present in the moment, if you're aware in the moment, how would you describe that?
Like watching a movie with all the thoughts coming and going without just observing them.
Mm-hmm. Does that sound right to everyone? Keep in mind, now one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that when you're dealing with something, an experience that's so vast, it is very difficult to capture it in black and white language, which is unfortunately the Western civilized experience of the world, black and white. So there's a metaphor of pointing a finger at the moon. You pay attention to the finger or the moon. The words can point the direction for you, but it's your practice that's ultimately going to give you the insight into what it means to be mindful. So please don't get caught up too much in the language and think, that's it, as long as I intellectually understand it, I'll be there. No. The practice is absolutely necessary. And the practice begins the moment you open your eyes in the morning. Did anybody remember when they woke up this morning, the first thought that entered their minds? Anybody want to share?
I woke up before my alarm clock.
How soft my dog's ears are.
That's awesome.
It was.
Was your dog right there with you?
Yeah, the dog's right there. Morning to the pooch.
So after you felt how soft your dog's ears are, what was your second thought?
I don't think I had one after that. I just kind of marinated on it.
It's kind of a guy thing,
I felt
you know.
half back sleep.
Who else wants to share what their first thought was?
I just was so tired. That was all I could think about, how tired I was.
And being tired, was there any frustration around that?
No, just tired.
Did you get up and start moving anyway?
I didn't. I had no choice.
Seriously?
I didn't have a lot of time. I gave myself...
The house was on fire and it was either live or die. So when you say you had no choice.
I'm trying to discipline myself by taking part and following through, walking out the door and being here, and I'm really excited. I think it's great.
Wow.
So that's the motivation.
I better amp up the energy then so that I can match your excitement. Any other people want to share their first thought?
Mine was very similar. Like, do I sleep another hour or do I get up now? I chose getting up.
I begin to download the agenda of the next coming hours and to try to get some framework on what steps I need to be taking to get where I need to go.
So you get a little systematic.
Yeah.
I thought we were failing because my baby sleeps in the bed with me and he wasn't like right next to me. So I was like, yeah, where is he?
So some of us began with focusing on a sensation of softness, sensation of tired, and a little bit of fear.
It's a good combination.
A lunge towards a random.
Mm-hmm. That protective instinct that parents know. What if when you woke up in the morning, regardless of how your body was feeling, you began with just a simple prayer of gratitude? Thank you. One of the things that is true for me more so than ever is physical pain and fatigue. So I have a chronic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's genetic. There's no cure for it. And what it essentially means is that the genes that produce the collagen, the connective tissue in my joints, is faulty. So as time goes on, our bodies have this natural wear and tear. And as time goes on, and I put more stress and more work on my ligaments and tendons, they get lousier and lousier at doing their job. So my joints are very unstable. It's very difficult to move without being exhausted. I have joints that slip out of place on a regular basis. When I stand or walk, the bones in my feet shift and sometimes they get stuck. And that can really hurt like an SOB. But I see that as an opportunity to intensify my practice. There's one thing I learned, and I'll kind of bounce around with my life story a little bit as I feel it kind of fits what we're doing here. I had cancer when I was 18. My graduation present from high school. I discovered the tumor 3 weeks before finals, had it removed, graduated, only to discover a month later that it was back five times worse than it was at the time of surgery. So I spent that summer in chemotherapy. I felt so many emotions: fear, resentment, anger. And when I got to the point where I realized I didn't want to live that way anymore, and I was looking within my current understanding of things and my current skill set, and there were no answers. So on one of my better days, I went down to the public library, which was in walking distance of my house, and I immersed myself in the spirituality, philosophy, and self-help areas. And one of the things I came across was the Tao Te Ching. You familiar with that book?
Yeah.
That wonderful phrase, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step," came from that book. It was written by a Taoist sage called Lao Tzu, a couple thousand years ago at least. And here my mind was scrambling to try and figure out how was I going to get from my current level of suffering and get all the way to not suffering. And I was struggling to find that answer. And here in this book, it said, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." So I realized that all I needed to figure out now was the first step. I didn't have to figure out the entire journey. So I read that book and absorbed as much as I could. Then I started coming across some Buddhist texts. And I read a lot about how letting go was the solution, as opposed to trying to get the life you had loved to stay. That the essential nature of things is change, is transience. One of the greatest gifts that comes from your yoga experience here is the fact that you have to spend time with your breath. You feel it coming in, you feel it going out. That is the most accessible way for us to experience the nature of life. It's always in motion, it's always changing, it's always coming, it's always going. When you sit and listen to the wind, listen to birds chirp, and you forget to say to yourself, "I wish I could listen to this all day. I wish it wasn't going anywhere. I wish it could simply stay." When you're able to let go of that expectation and just be with that, you're being mindful. You're being present with the experience you're having. I had the privilege of spending some time with Church.
The cat.
The cat. And Paul was kind enough to give me a little bit of Church's story. That Church is blind and deaf from a sensory standpoint, and yet Church was able to find me. And Church spent time rubbing up against my hand, licking my hand a little bit, saying hi. If anybody's had that experience, you would not believe for one moment that Church can't see. And one thing I shared with Paul is that I'm colorblind. I have a hard time experiencing the colors of flowers, of the leaves changing. I can see some color, but not at the scale that most people can. I can't see the subtle changes between them. However, when I'm deep in meditation and my energy shifts, I often see very vibrant colors. The ones that I'm unable to see on a leaf, I can see with my eyes closed. So there are many ways to see. There are many ways to experience touch. Whether it's Church rubbing up against you, whether it's your dog's soft ears, whether it's taking a moment to say a little bit of gratitude that there's that pad between you and the floor. A lot of mindfulness is just being grateful for the experience you're having. Who wants to share what they had for breakfast this morning?
Banana.
Coffee.
Banana.
Coffee, right on.
Like that deep voice there.
Yeah.
Just coffee.
Coffee to me is like liquid oxygen. It really gets me started in the morning. So do you drink the coffee for its taste? Do you drink it for the boost it gives you?
I like the taste. I drink it black, but I do feel it gives me a little clarity.
Oh yeah.
I like the warm
feeling?
Warming up.
See,
I do it too.
see, how beautiful is this? You can experience the warmth, the flavor,
Smell.
the smell. Okay? It is so easy for us to overwhelm ourselves when we think that we are responsible for taking it all in. And I also have raging ADHD. and was kind enough to pass it on to my sons. And it's very easy when you don't know how to tame your monkey mind. Because the Buddha framed the mind as saying that the mind is always chattering like a monkey. And you need to learn how to tame it. An important thing in taming anything is to stop feeding it. And it will calm down. I think of the flow of thoughts as a river. You can sit on the shore and observe the river going by, or you can jump in and start treading water. Okay? And when you jump in the river and you're swimming and you're splashing and you're getting it all over you, that's getting caught up in your thoughts. One thing that we know about our thoughts is they're always there. They're always sprouting up, even if we're not particularly focused on anything. It's almost like weeds in a garden. They grow without your help. But in order to grow a garden, that needs your attention. But often we get caught up in the weeds. The anxiety, the fear, the doubt, the judgment. So one of the most important tasks of mindfulness is to simply be able to observe without participating. To allow the thoughts to simply be there, and you can watch the conversation. Like you're at a cocktail party, listening to people talk. That's interesting. Wonder why you went with that. It's an interesting belief. Okay. But the conversation doesn't continue. The thing that we are often looking to reconcile with mindfulness is this ongoing drama in our mind that tells us that our life is not good enough. That is the root of all human suffering. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good looking enough. I don't have enough money. And always walking around with that sense of inferiority. And that is also fed by comparing ourselves with someone else. I wish I was as good looking as that guy. I wish I could get a girl like that. The more dissatisfied you are with your life, the more unhappy you are. But few people realize that each moment of your life is absolutely perfect. And when I say it's perfect, I mean everything is as it should be. Let me give you an example. Because my joints are unstable, I'm always bumping into things in my house. The conversation I could have around that is, this sucks. Why me? Why'd this have to happen? What I actually do is say, of course. My joints are clumsy. I have a hard time balancing. Of course I'm going to bump into things. By design, why would it work any other way? When you're not paying attention to what you're doing because you're rushing and you knock your coffee over, of course. When I'm not paying attention and my hand sweeps and bumps into the coffee, why wouldn't it do that? Of course that's how it goes. It's perfect. It's simple cause and effect. That's how it goes. One of the things when I do it in public and I make a mistake and people look at me, I could be embarrassed, I could be ashamed because I wasn't good enough in that moment, or I could just say, everyone, take notes, that's how that's done. And I bet you anything I could duplicate that outcome. And I can find a joy in that experience because it's a very human experience. We are imperfect beings, in many ways living a perfect life. Is this resonating with you folks so far?
Yeah.
Is this helpful?
I'm taking notes on all of it.
I was going to ask you a question. Do you feel like, too, our society, especially in the United States, pre-programs us to have that like false
Deficit.
ego
Yeah,
identities that we just like constantly compare ourselves to what the quote-unquote norm is?
One thing that is problematic about culture in general, and it's not a good or a bad, it's simply a fact. It's just simply a fact, is that the culture we're in tries to role us. This is your role. You are a man, which means this in this culture. You are a woman, which means this. And Terry and I went to grad school together. A lot of our education was to role us as a social worker. This is who you must be. This is what you must believe. This is how you must act. And on Facebook, I put it all out there. I don't believe in coming from any kind of filter. I'm not doing stuff like, well, my wife and I just had a tryst, man. I wish you were there. It's not that unfiltered. But I'm very vulnerable with the experiences I'm having, because when it comes to showing up in the lives of other people, what you are essentially doing, on one level at least, is inviting them into that experience with you. And there are people out there that are afraid of their fear. They don't want to let the world know that they're afraid, that they're anxious. However, if someone else puts an experience out there saying, I'll let her get all settled in.
We had a bat go out, so.
There's like room for two on that. Nice big wicker chair.
We need the kitty cat, so we're just happy.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay for the time being. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any painkillers stuck in?
Do you want some of this? It's really good. No, I mean, it's topical.
I've got a neighborhood pharmacy at home, with painkillers and creams and all that stuff. I totally appreciate pharmaceuticals. So where were we?
We were society.
Yes, rolling us.
Grad school. Boom.
The one thing that we are not schooled in is how to embrace our core humanity. There tends to always be some larger agenda that we're satisfying. And that has its place. Absolutely. But when we are so busy maintaining the role, there are many people that they have the success, they have the relationships, but they still feel unfulfilled, because they're spending more time feeding the role instead of feeding their humanity. Mm-hmm. And that creates a big challenge for us. And when you can be present with your thoughts as an observer, when you can be present with any emotion that arises and simply ask yourself, what's that about? Where'd that come from? As opposed to shooting all over yourself. I shouldn't feel this way, I should be feeling that. This is how it should be. Those shoulds are basically the assessment that this moment's not good enough. I'm doing it wrong, I should be doing something else. So I invite you to stop shooting all over yourself.
I love that.
And instead, ask the question, where'd that come from? Why anger in this moment? Why fear? Get to understand it as opposed to feeling bad about it. I have anxiety from time to time. I have frustration. And I could say, man, I blew it as a Buddhist. That man would be so ashamed of me right now. Or I could just ask the question, where'd that come from? Observe it, understand it, be thankful for it, and then reconnect with my center, reconnect with my heart. One of the visualizations that I use that allows me to stay very connected with other people is when I breathe in, I imagine light coming through my crown chakra into my heart, and then when I exhale, I see the light going forward. And connecting with your heart that way, that often, makes it very easy to come from love instead of ego. And it's a simple exercise. I mean, Terry had you guys breathing like bandits, man. You know how to do that. And when you wake up each morning, your first thought is gratitude. Spend some time breathing into your heart and breathing it back out. It's very difficult to dread your day when you are coming from that place, because it compels you to take in love and look forward into your day with love. Can you imagine what it would be like to live your life that way? I had an interesting conversation with one of my clients yesterday, a gentleman in Venezuela. I love Skype. It's like we're in the same room together. And I even sent this out. Are you on my email list? Mm-hmm. And I shared it in my Facebook group as well. Mm-hmm. That connection is something that many, many people misunderstand. When you think of connecting with another person, what comes up for you?
Most commonly the mask, connecting with the masks. Not getting down deep ever. Generally it's just passing.
Tell us more about that, connecting with the mask.
Well, it's just what you're presenting to people, how you're covering your pain, your suffering, your worries, your concerns, your fears, your elations. Because maybe in the moment, you don't want to be too happy because it might, influence this other person in a way that you're afraid of. So you just put up a shell, a mask, armor, and that's what you're showing people. And people are showing you that type of reflection very quickly, and it allows for a real vague, weak connection which satisfies the moment, but never lets us get into the roots and the real tangible things that we're feeling and that we are.
Well done, sir. In many ways, what we present to other people is an effort to convince them to buy our bullshit.
Say that again.
Okay? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah? We wear the role, we wear the mask, and we want to sell ourselves to somebody else. And when they give us the feedback we're looking for,
yeah.
Okay, we say, whew, I can be a fraud for another day. They've bought it. But what's unfortunate is you spend the rest of your life in fear that you'll be found out.
I don't. Just ask my sister.
She's not here.
Yes, she is.
You're the sister?
Kindergarten for second grade.
You're the kindergarten teacher?
Your teacher. And I will tell you that when I was talking to Terry, I was afraid she wasn't going to give it to me, so. And then he went and told her. I was afraid, and I was like, don't tell her that. So I didn't want her to know that I was stressing over it. Because I wanted to just accept what was going to be, and I was going to be where I was supposed to be. And if that was at the new school, that's where I was going to be, and if it was somewhere else. So I was kind of trying to just make peace with that and just go with the flow.
And if you are stressing over it, that's okay.
Wow.
That's where the work is.
I'm not stressing anymore. I was like, whoo, I could be a fraud for another day.
And if a time comes where you do stress, that is just a flag saying, this is where you are, this is where your attention's needed. There's nothing about your experience to feel bad about, because every moment of your experience is your teacher. If somebody says something to you and you become upset, you could say, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. Or you could say, that's interesting. Some work I thought that I was finished with has now come back up. I need to give that some attention. Making peace with it is when you realize this is part of my experience. Of course this comes up. There's a reason for it. Something gave rise to it. When you think about connection, it's important to understand that there are usually two parts to it. And in our conversation today, I could not be having this conversation without you. I am because you are. The flower is because the bee is. They depend on each other. So to think that any of our experiences can occur without each other is false. Plain and simple. What I was explaining to my client in Venezuela, he was having a hard time understanding connecting with other people. He thought of it as either you're connected or you're not connected. And I told him that there's much more to the story. There are two ways to connect with people. And again, I encourage you to think about this from a heart place and not a head place, because if you think about it too intellectually, you'll get caught up in that. Okay? The first part of the connection is you connect on the basis of similarity. When you feel understood by the other person, you're sharing an experience with one another, and you keep having this thought of, me too. I thought I was alone. I'm so glad you get me. And most people believe that connection stops there. They want to be with people that understand them. But there's another part of connection that's much more profound. And if you can engage a person on both of these levels, suddenly the idea of you and me disappears. And there is just this moment together. The second part of connection is when you see another person with whom you are complementary. They have a strength that could help you. You have a strength that can help them. And when you combine your efforts, you experience something called synergy, where something new occurs simply because you came together. Something you could not create independent of one another. So this result occurs because of us. Make sense? As opposed to this competitiveness where you're trying to one-up each other all the time. I'm faster than you, I'm smarter than you. That's not synergy, that's division, that's disconnect. So when you find somebody that you not only have that me too experience with, but you also have that experience of complementarity, that we come together in this moment to make something more. I can only imagine what it was like to be in this room when you were doing the yoga class. What does it feel like energetically? Well, I'm not sure. I know it kind of smells a little rank. All the body sweating.
Like energy's connected, and if you can feed off of other people's energy or give other people energy, like if you mentally feel like, oh my gosh, this expo is going to be really hard, there's something, energy in the room that just carries you to that, and you can do more than you thought that you could.
That's a beautiful example. Does anybody else feel the same? Yeah.
It's like a buzz. The room feels alive.
I like that buzz, energy.
You can almost kind of see it too. I don't know. You can you just feel
I believe you.
and you get tingly and
Because, energy can be dense. It can be light. It can be somewhere in the middle. But the fact that you open yourself up to it as opposed to resisting it, letting the energy in so that it can charge you up. And you can feel that between two people. It doesn't necessarily require pumping music, an enthusiastic teacher, but that helps. Because one thing I can imagine Terry doing is inviting you to take one step beyond what you think you can do. It's inviting you to move forward into growth. One metaphor that I learned quite recently, which helped create a big shift in my thinking, and I hope it'll do the same for you, is when we think about what it means to be ourselves, again, this whole role idea. In my case, I could say I'm a father, I'm a cancer survivor, I'm a social worker, whatever role. The problem becomes when you mistakenly believe that that role is the whole story, that that's all there is to you. When the reality is, we all arise from something. The flower rises from the sun, the dirt, many other things. We arise from this universe, this dharma, this Tao, whatever you want to call it. There's a famous astrophysicist getting a lot of attention these days. I'm trying to remember his first name. African-American gentleman. Like deGrasse Tyson, I can't remember his first name. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Brilliant guy. And one thing he says frequently is, we are all made of star stuff. Everything that's on the earth came from someplace else. Asteroids bringing carbon and iron and all these other things crashing into the earth, and when these things synergize and have these new reactions, suddenly there's life. So we have this universal force that even the very linear thinking scientists agree with, that we come from that. So the metaphor that I was alluding to is when you think of the creative force of the universe as a big fire. It's this generating heat that's coming forth. Has anybody here ever sat in front of a campfire? You see these sparks popping out all over, right? We are the sparks. But one of the problems, one of the things we get caught up in, is we mistakenly believe that we are the spark and forget that we come from the fire. So if you were to contemplate yourself as the fire versus the spark, how much more would there be to you in terms of your potential, in terms of what you could bring to the experience with another human being? Because if you identify with the creative source that has absolutely everything in it, that means whenever you show up with another human being, you have everything to give them. And it begins simply by being present. Coming from that creative source, that source of generosity, abundance, love. That's what the universe is based on. And some people might say, oh, but death isn't creative and destruction isn't creative. That's just the universe reorganizing itself, saying, I want to do something else with this stuff now. You've been a human for a while. You've been a building for a while. I have another purpose for you. So it will break apart and reconfigure someone else. That's the idea of reincarnation. You've been in this form for a while, let's do something else now. I'm not saying it's easy to adapt that point of view. It's hard work, but it is extraordinarily worthwhile work. When I post things on Facebook quite often, and one of the most common responses is, oh, easier said than done. Okay. Yeah, that's why people do a lot of talking. It's very easy. But you know who's doing the work by the results they get. There are people who put all of these wonderful quotes out there, these beautiful memes, but they're miserable. They're doing a lot of talking, but they're not doing the work. If you are doing the work, my friends, you do not need to talk about it. People will see it in the way you show up. Let that do the talking for you. Because once you let go of the mask, as Paul so beautifully explained, you're no longer trying to convince anybody of anything. You are showing up to have that experience with them. That experience of that two-pronged connection. Me too. You have something in common with every other human being, whether you've met them or not. And that thing we have in common is that on some level we suffer. And we come together to find a way beyond that suffering. And sometimes it's as easy as being understood by another person. One other human being reminding you that you are not alone. And then showing up, asking yourself, how can I be of service to you? How can I be helpful? And when you show up in that way together, you have the second connection. In this school that Terry so brilliantly envisioned and has now brought us all into is about finding a new way to educate kids who experience more than their share of suffering in a traditional system that wants to turn them into cogs, part of a larger machine that simply for these kids isn't an option. They are unconventional human beings, unconventional learners, and they need a much more fluid system to help them grow. And that's one of the things we're creating. It's, whenever I think about it, it's so exciting to see where it's going to go. But one of the beauties of it, and the conversations we've had, is there are no real shoulds driving the agenda. It's about having that experience of just discovery, just learning together, being that community. It's almost like a sangha, but we're not going to call it that because the powers that be might just get a little twitchy. And we don't want that. It's going to be a very interesting balance between the two things. Satisfying the bureaucratic beast and helping these kids grow. What's coming up for you as we're having this conversation?
Intense feelings of love.
I'm making connections to personal experiences and perspectives.
Any particular experience you'd like to share?
More recently about the mask. Just, I just let people in, let them see. This is who I am. This is exactly where I am in my life right now, and it's okay. I don't have to sugarcoat it.
Yeah, you're exactly where you're meant to be, because if you hold certain beliefs that inform certain actions, of course that's what you'd be doing. It makes sense. So when someone says, I'm exactly where I should be, exactly where I'm meant to be, then if somebody is looking at you through the eyes of not good enough, but don't you think you should be doing this? Don't you think you should be aspiring to that? Then you can look at them and say, I'm good. There's one thing I shared. The gentleman in Venezuela, we had just a very powerful conversation yesterday. My wife, who I love dearly, is very anxious, and she gets caught up in that a lot. And she will want me to be anxious with her and the things that she's concerned about. And if I'm not getting anxious, she'll tell me, you're not taking this seriously. Right? And what I say to her is, I have the same concerns as you do, but I have a different way of approaching it.
Thank you.
But because I'm not anxious doesn't mean I don't care. And one thing I constantly remind her of is that, Oh, nice tattoo on the back of the leg, brother.
Oh, thank you.
Shiny object, come my way. There's the ADHD in full bloom. Let's spend a moment contemplating his tattoo.
My nephew drew that, so that's what thank you.
Thank him.
I have.
I can get that too.
So when she gets anxious like that, I know that a big part of what generates her anxiety is her story. She's telling herself a story about this moment, what's not right about it, how it should be. And I remind myself that I have a different story. The way to support her in that moment isn't to try and convince her out of her anxiety, because that's where she is. But instead to sit there with her and extend that love, that connection, to say, we are in this moment together with a shared concern. There is something that requires our attention. Her story compels her to feel anxious. My story compels me to be present, to look at it for what it is, but don't give it so much energy that it sabotages my ability to be resourceful. Because when you are anxious, you are problem-focused. Oh my goodness, this is terrible, and if this goes on, it's going to create this and this other thing. And before you know it, Donald Trump is president. Okay, well, we won't spend too much time on that. Staying calm, staying focused, staying open, realizing that you are connected to a universe that has everything. So when any kind of difficulty arises, you have the universe at your disposal. It's just a matter of finding the answers you need. And often those answers come from finding your fellow sparks and asking them, what insight do you have in terms of what's available to us? And when you brought us all together as the board, that collaboration, knowing that it is not your responsibility to have all the answers. It's your responsibility to know that the answers exist and then go about finding them. Because that part of connection that's complementary, it requires us to seek each other out, as opposed to that single puzzle piece that says, I don't need you. I don't need you to complete this wonderful picture. I'll just exist all by myself. But a puzzle piece that seeks connection, because knowing that we all come together and we create something more. It's one of the reasons why we're drawn together, because that connection's so powerful. Now, you won't hurt my feelings if it's otherwise, but do you feel the connection as we're having this conversation?
Absolutely.
Because we're talking from our heart, from our shared experience. One truth that will always connect us is that we're all in this together. One thing that is unfortunate is how often I see the term self-made thrown around out there. I'm a self-made this, I'm a self-made that. And my response to that is, that's quite a bullshit story you're telling yourself. As right now, I don't believe for 1 second that you spent all your time up all night making this mat. Right? I didn't make this chair. I had nothing to do with building this.
Right.
But if I took some time to realize that we are having this moment because of everybody that created this space, you can take a deep breath and say thank you. When you eat your breakfast, sip your coffee. One thing I've been doing since I was a kid is being fascinated by pictures from like a century ago. Looking at the faces of the people and asking myself, How did they get to that point? What was their story? And realizing that there are peoples whose stories compelled them to create the things that make our lives better. The pen in your hand, the mat beneath you, the chair underneath you. That's part of we're all in it together. And every experience you have has that energy. If you wake up each morning realizing that, being grateful for the pillow, being grateful for the bed, you are being supported through every step of your life by people you may never meet, but by people who took the time to do something to take care of you. And to be mindful of that connection. It all comes back to the fire. Everything is at our disposal. We are part of everything. We have everything to give. Now that doesn't mean it's your duty to save the world.
What?
Yes, it is.
Well, not today at least. Today is a holiday, okay? But
I have to disagree. I think it's our duty to lift each other up. Totally.
that's different than saving the world.
Well, that is saving the world, though.
How
One
so?
person at a time. Because if everyone collectively did that, the world wouldn't need saving.
I don't think the world needs anybody to save it at all.
That's right,
What
exactly.
what the world could really benefit from is waking up.
Right. Awareness, right.
Getting rid of those beliefs that it's me against you,
Right.
we're in competition, I have to be better, I have to be faster.
Unlearning.
A lot of unlearning, absolutely.
Right. But again, I just did a big research project for my 500-hour teacher.
Oh, he's about to hit us with some facts.
Not necessarily facts, but I mean, this is what I discovered, and I wouldn't say like it's what I wrote the men's module, which originally I set out on this journey of like comparing, like they wanted me to write what all teachers should need to know in a 500-hour class about like men, like, because men are different than women, and so I started this journey with like all the differences, right? Like men are this, women are that, and the more I dug into it over the several months, I did research and did a survey of a bunch of male yoga teachers and stuff. And the more I dug, the more I come back to just exactly what you're saying, that we aren't any different inside. We're all spirits in a body having an earthly experience, and the identities are just false ego identities that our society creates so that we can be our good little cash cow producers for,
It's your job to be a consumer.
Right, exactly.
Now, go and buy, because your life isn't good enough unless you have the newest phone.
Exactly.
Unless you smell this way and your hair is fashioned in this.
and they play,
Is your hair frizzy? Then you suck.
Right.
Go out and get my product. That's the consumer culture that we live in. Yeah.
how they prey upon women and men as consumers, because if you're a guy, you gotta have the best job and more money and more stuff, and then you can get a better looking girl, and then the girls are all like, oh, we gotta have the right makeup and the right clothes and blah 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 blah, and it's all just like big. It's all a big.
I have to make my lips puffier, and I have to go and get breast enhancements and all that stuff.
I can't just be as I am and be okay. Even the concept of money, like we don't. Somebody somewhere sold humanity the lie that we can't just walk out in the yard, pick something to eat it, and just be.
Just make sure
buy it from somebody else.
just make sure you cleaned up after the dogs before you go picking anything out of your yard.
That's extra flavor.
Remind me never to eat at your house.
Well, we were talking about the assumption of choice also when
Right.
you go and purchase.
Right.
If you think about there's
Right.
Dole and what are the other salad brands is the conversation we're having. What's Dole and then the other one?
Yeah, I want the one that's listeria free.
The bag of
Which
the bag of-
brand is that?
The bag of salads, the different brands, it's all coming from the same
Right. Just like
Where
cocaine.
something-
It's coming from the same farm.
So
Well-
when we look and we think we have all these choices, oh, we can choose this choice and that choice. It's all the same thing anyway.
Yeah.
So even that's a lie.
There's one company, I think it's somewhere in Europe, that is responsible for selling every brand of eyeglasses on the market. And you'll have the one brand that costs you $29 and one brand that costs you $500. The only difference is the branding. So they're selling you a story that this is worth more. And you'll be better if you wear these glasses.
And we buy the more expensive headsets.
Yeah, because there are all of these stories that we are being invited to participate in.
And that's because of suffering. That goes back to
Yes.
that's because the human condition is that of suffering, which you can't undergo transformation without suffering. The Apostle Paul writes about the joy of suffering, and suffering brings you to awareness and transformation. And so, because humanity goes through suffering, it's easy, and then that in our society here in the United States, not elsewhere in the world, but here, everyone is stressed out. We're stressed because we gotta have this stuff, and we gotta do this, and I gotta get up. No, you don't gotta do anything but die. That's the only thing you have to do. Then you're going.
And it can be argued that you don't even do that.
You don't have to do that either.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. But that's a whole other conversation. So, but the stress brings the anxiety, and then the anxiety brings the compulsions, and then they're back in selling you more stuff. So sex, drugs, money, alcohol, whatever it is, pills, shopping, hobbies, whatever it is, to try and alleviate the suffering rather than come back yoga.
And you bring up a very interesting point. There is healthy dissatisfaction.
Right.
If you're feeling hungry and you tell yourself, I'm dissatisfied with this feeling, I'm going to eat something. I'm tired. I'm not satisfied with this, I'm going to sleep. Learning to meditate, taking yoga, exercising, that is a dissatisfaction with the current state of how you feel within your body. You don't want to suffer. Mm-hmm. There's some part of you that says, this is not as good as it gets. I want something else that compels you to become mindful and meditate and find what's on the other side of your suffering. So there is some dissatisfaction that is healthy for you and can give you some compelling leverage to look for something more. But that suffering that comes from the place that I'm not good enough, that's not healthy for you. It doesn't allow you to connect with somebody else and make the world better if you say, I'm not worth spending time with, I have nothing to give. And there are people that live their lives that way. And the world will never discover their gifts as long as they feel they've got nothing to give. One gift, or two gifts rather, that each and every one of you has at any given time is the gift of your time and attention. To just spend that time with one other person, being present, coming from that place of love and letting them know you are not alone as long as I'm around. And if you show up in that way, and that way alone, imagine how many lives can be impacted by that. Because when you realize how much suffering is out there, how many people feel they're not good enough, and you show up, and in your mind you're saying, I love you, and you don't have to do a darn thing to earn it. That can be so transformative.
And which goes back to what Paul was saying, is that that's why they wear the mask, so that people don't see that they're suffering.
Yeah.
Instead of just being authentic about, hey, this is me, my good and, because we all have both the good and the bad. And a lot of times we just want to portray the good side, unless we've undergone some transformation.
What would be an example of the bad side?
Well, again, that's judgment too. I mean, it could be argued that if you are out there making a mistake of taking someone else's life, that's bad. Some people would say it's not bad. I don't know who those people are, but in general, as a world, we don't feel like it's okay to take another person's life. But people that are, people that have committed crimes, people that have suffered with an addiction, like being a drug addict, where their addiction's gotten them so far down they've robbed their parents or their family or treated others poorly. Those types of things.
Are you familiar with the concept of projection?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you are untrusting, you believe others are untrustworthy.
Right.
People are going to screw you over.
Mm-hmm.
The people out there doing the worst stuff, imagine how profound their suffering must be.
It is. It's horrible.
That they are so hopeless that they think, I need to rob, steal, kill. And even then they're not satisfied.
Right.
The people that are able to forgive the person that murdered their loved one, they often get to that place where they realize, as much as I'm going to miss this person, what you did was not personal for me. It's an indication of just how much you're suffering. And chances are, your suffering is a hell of a lot more intense than mine. Because my life can go on, I can make peace with the loss of this person, but you are stuck in that muck that you are creating for yourself. In many ways, forgiveness is an act of compassion. Seeing the suffering in the other person and wishing them, to some extent, that they discover that spark of love that they're missing, so they can transform that suffering into something useful. And again, I'm not saying that's an easy thing to come to. But imagine how your life can change if you do the work to get there. Very profound.
Forgiveness, that's a tough one.
There's still people that'll question it though and say that you're letting people walk all over you and stuff. Like I had that happen to me recently where somebody, you're just letting people walk all over you. I'm like, no, I see exactly what it is. I choose not to react to this though. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to stay true to who I am in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And
letting people...
It bothers me. It's something that resonated with me that this kid said this to me, and I'm like, I don't let people walk all over me. I used to let people. That was my old story, and everything. That's not who I am though now.
Letting people walk all over you is when you continue to allow them to do the same thing to you over and over again. If somebody were to not appreciate your generosity, you help them with some money, you buy them groceries, whatever it is, and they don't appreciate it, and they simply want to use you and you spot that, then you can set the boundary and say, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have helped you, but it seems to me that that hasn't allowed you to move forward. So at this point, I'm going to have to say goodbye, wish you well, and if you find yourself in a more grateful place, let's get back together. Because if you have those competing stories, it's going to be hard to find connection. All the energy is going to be going one way, and you're going to find yourself sapped dry. If you allow your other people to walk all over you, you're going to feel exhausted all the time. Because that part of connection where you're looking to be of service to each other clearly is not existing with that person. And if you have this sense that, but I need to help, sometimes you're being helpful when you say, I'm not the one who is meant to guide you. But you have the universe at your disposal. Go forth and find the person that's meant to help you. As it turns out, it's not me. Because there are some folks that think they need to rescue. They need to be the problem solver for everyone. Often, the best way to be of help is to send them on their way. Wish them well and encourage them to find another hand to hold, so that you can focus on giving your energy to the people who can most benefit from your gifts. Does this make sense?
I think it's also ego deciding how someone else should lead their lives, because, you know, I've been in it. When you're in that helper mode, you want to save everyone. It's your idea of what they should be doing and what path they should be on. So that's your ego getting in the way of deciding what they should be doing and how they should be saved. When, you know, everything is as it is. If you see someone who's suffering for some reason, you know, they need that experience to level up in their own lives.
Absolutely.
And save them from it, or you're actually denying them the experience that they need to have. So that's the other piece about like saving the world. Is that you can't.
When
do that for someone.
you're absolutely right. When you're proceeding from that place of you think you know better, and someone else steps in and says, "Oh, let me do that." When if they seem frustrated to you, you can spot frustration because you yourself have felt it. So one way to check in with them is to ask, "How's that going? I'm curious about what is it you're trying to make happen." And they might say, "Oh, I'm trying to get this and it's not working." Okay. So you would like something else to happen. Would you like some help with that? Because through those couple questions, you get the sense of what result they're looking for. And if it's, "Well, I'm trying to break into this house because this rich bastard has a safe," and you're not going to help him with that. That increases suffering. You could just say, "Excuse me, I have a call to make. And there are some big burly guys with badges that are probably going to want to talk to you. Just
I'm not the right person to help."
Stay put." Yeah. "I am not the right person. I don't feel that synergy." But it's finding out, what are they looking to do? Can I be helpful to you? When I go to a restaurant, the waiter or waitress doesn't say, "Oh, I know what you're going to want. Forget the menu. This is what you're eating." They ask, "Well, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can get you?" My wife and I are famous over-tippers. Because when someone genuinely shows up to serve, that is a very sacred experience. It isn't somebody completing a task. "Well, you're supposed to be of service. You're supposed to be polite." I've met some pretty cranky service people. Probably because they are very dissatisfied with their situation. They're missing the opportunities. We get paid to complete a task. Nobody pays us to be a decent human being. That's something that we choose. And that's ultimately what makes the difference. There's one waitress who works at our favorite sushi place out there in the sticks. And she is so present and so giving. We're now Facebook friends. We have her cell phone number. And we're supporting her as she decides she's going back to college and wanting to better her life. And my wife and I have decided we're going to help you. We're going to reciprocate because you've shown up in a way for us that is unique. That we want to support you in becoming as amazing a person as you've decided to become. And it takes time, attention, presence, generosity, love. We're not having to put forth one dime towards her education. We are just going to be there and care. So she's never alone no matter what she's experiencing. It's amazing how when you decide to believe in another human being, how many options suddenly become available to them. They believe more in what the possibility is because they know they can take risks. Because if they fall, they know someone will be there to catch them. That's another powerful thing about connection. Eliminating that sense of aloneness. Some people say that the biggest fear people have is public speaking. In my experience, the biggest fear is the feeling of being alone. And if somebody is afraid of public speaking, it's because they mistakenly believe that they are on the stage all by themselves. It's actually that fear of being alone. It's me and it's them. No, it isn't. It's us. We're in this experience together. Since we started talking, I haven't felt alone for 1 second. Because this is our experience. Every moment of our life is co-created. Unfortunately, depending on how our parents raised us, even after they've gone, they continue to help us co-create our experience through any kind of belief they've imprinted upon us. I work with clients a lot, as I imagine you do too, Terry, that parents have raised their kids to be afraid. Don't do this, don't do that, what are you thinking? Imagine what would happen if you do that. And parents encourage them to create a story where safety is the priority, as opposed to growth. Safety has its place. I'm not going to walk out in front of the SUV that's coming down the street.
Why not?
Because I don't bounce, that's why.
I'm just curious to know the answer to that.
But I realize we're all on our own journey, so I invite you to have that experience for yourself.
I have had that experience for myself.
And hopefully that's a lesson you only have to learn once, right?
He's here.
Yeah. I was, when my older boy, who's now 18, when he was 5, we were involved in a rollover accident. We went through a green light, somebody else went through a red light, hit the side of our minivan at 50 miles an hour. And we flipped over and skidded on the roof. All the windows blew out. We were hanging upside down. Strangers jumped out of their cars. And I started hearing these voices. Are you okay? How can I help? What can I do for you? And my first line was, get my kids out of this car. Because I had 2 boys in their seats in the back hanging upside down, an 18-month-old and a 5-year-old. Strangers got them out of their car seats and got them away from the vehicle. I was hanging upside down for 20 minutes. Fortunately, we were about 2 blocks from a fire department. Before I knew it, firemen, police were showing up, people that had committed their lives to be of service. And they had to, there was something with my seat that prevented the seatbelt from releasing. So they did something and I got out of there. And as I look back on that experience, I had so much gratitude for these people whose faces I never saw, who got out of their cars to help me and my sons. I'm grateful for the people that built that minivan so sturdy, because one of the firemen told me that if that roof had come in 1 more inch, it would have broken my neck. So I could be mad at the driver, which I was for a while. I didn't say, oh, don't worry about love, it's all good. Because I had adrenaline going on. I was Papa Bear and I was in protective mode. Take care of my kids. I called up the people that sold me the car. I wrote an email to the manufacturers of the car seats, thanking everybody for saving my sons' lives. So even in moments like that, as I mentioned earlier, there are all these people that contributed to that moment that you may never meet, but they're absolutely worthy of your gratitude. Hear the wind outside? There are some people, even in my own home, that will say, oh, it's so windy. Oh, that really sucks. It's raining outside. Oh, it's so dreary. When one of the wonderful quotes that I heard, I think I read it many, many years ago, is smile even when it rains, because without rain, life would be impossible. The raining isn't about you. It isn't about, oh, well, God just knew I wanted to go to the beach today, and He just wanted to stick it to me. That's not how it works. The birds, the squirrels, the grass, the farmers, they all need the water. So you can smile and think about all the wonderful things that are coming, the flowers, the vegetables that are being grown. It's coming because it's raining. It's okay. He just had a human moment. That's okay.
I have a lot of those.
It's nowadays. I put a video about this on Facebook. I'm doing the 5 o'clock shadow a lot more these days because it's part of my condition. The joints in my hands are very loose and they get tired very, very quickly. And the past couple weeks, with all this weather that's going on, it really impacts my joints. So I just said, all right, shaving is going to have to take a seat because I've got to be able to keyboard all day as part of my work. So I've got to save my strength for that. And I reflected on that a little bit, worrying about the mask that people expect. So many people judge, oh, well, you don't look like you don't care about yourself. You're a mess. Look at you. And I had to basically reflect upon that and let that be my course of study. And what I arrived at is people come to me for my message. They come to me for how I show up. They don't come to me saying, that hat's crooked.
Right.
He didn't do what he should have. He's obviously not professional. Look at how he's dressed. Do you know what professional is? It's one criteria. You get paid for what you do. That's it. If I show up in sweats, but I deliver value and somebody pays me for that, I'm a professional. So I work with a lot of business people. I do have some sport coats and jeans, whatever, and I sometimes squeeze myself into it, begrudgingly. But that doesn't make me any more professional. What it does is it satisfies the script that other people have of what professional means. But one thing that's really cool is you can show up with the sport coat and so on, and as you connect with them and as they experience you, you can take the sport coat off and you can hang it up. Maybe put your hat back on. Because now that they've seen you and gotten past the mask is no longer necessary. As one of the cardinal rules that we learned is meet the client where they're at. If people are still caught up in their own BS, sometimes you need to meet them there and then start removing the layers and get a little deeper. The people that have worked with me for the longest time, the people that are very familiar with me on Twitter and Facebook, whatever, they don't care whether I've shaved that day or not. Because they comment on the message, on the value that I brought. And there are some people that are the grammar Nazis, that they get caught up in what I wrote or how I wrote it, and I say to myself, you and I are not sharing the same story. You're choosing to project perfectionism on something that has nothing to do with that. It's not about the details, it's about the experience. So you can let that go. So I can't remember what comment I made. I put a video out there and I put a description of it. And somebody posted that I broke some grammar rule. And I was very honest. I said, and I have dyslexia. Proper grammar and punctuation is not my priority. You know, judge it all you want, but you're missing the point. Unfriend, block.
That's right. You don't need that kind of negativity.
I don't need that kind of negativity. Yeah.
There's a beautiful poem in this. Oh, but you spelled the word wrong.
Yeah. Say, blame the spell checker. Don't blame me. And I don't have the energy to nitpick people's imperfections, because that is an opportunity for connection. We're all fragile, we're all vulnerable.
Right now, though?
What?
Question. Aren't we doing that right now?
Doing what?
Talking about this spell checker now.
We're talking about it as an example of how someone can seek
Okay.
perfection
Okay. Gotcha.
when that's not really a helpful ground to meet each other. When we come together and know that we suffer, we're imperfect, we make mistakes, and that's okay. That's who we are by design. We're all still trying to figure it out. Some of us have maybe some more answers than others because we've put more work in, but that doesn't make us better.
Right.
It just means that we got started a little bit earlier than somebody else did. That's it.
I love that, meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Kevin Spacey, if you're familiar with him?
Yes.
There's a meme that's going around, I see it a lot. It says, when you've had like the privilege of success, of reaching the top, you're obligated to send the elevator back down. Because the reality is, you didn't do it all on your own. Who are you to believe that you are so special and so exceptional that you should not pay it forward? When it comes to that whole sense of I'm separate, there are two kinds of arrogance as far as my current understanding. The first part thinks that you're so special that you're owed everything. And the second arrogance is you're so insignificant that you don't deserve anything. Because both believe that you are uniquely special in some way. I'm so special, God has singled me out to screw over. Really? Of the whole universe? He woke up in the morning and just said, "You're my bitch." Huh? I don't think the universe works like that. Nor is the universe going to neglect everybody else and make somebody uniquely special. Yeah, there are all these kids suffering and dying in Africa, but I'm going to make sure that you win the Super Bowl.
Mom's here for you, parent.
Cool. We have a few more minutes. Would anybody care to share your takeaways from this experience that we've been having together?
Gratitude for everything. And live with that in the center of your heart, and everything else will fall into place.
And when your mind strays, and it will, and feelings of fear, frustration, anxiety come up, that's your opportunity to ask yourself this: what am I feeling entitled to in this moment? What am I shoulding? What am I forgetting to be grateful for? So you have an opportunity to self-correct. Not because you did something wrong, not because you were bad, but because your priority is to be present, mindful, and grateful. And for a moment, you forgot that. And something else creeped up.
I think knowing that it's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay, that's a natural progression of things in the moment, and then
Yeah.
and then that reminder, like it's okay, and not being hard on yourself, because
Absolutely.
we as beings are hardest on ourselves.
Mm-hmm. It's like tipping over the glass of milk. Mm-hmm. If you lose focus and bump it, it's going to spill. Of course.
I love that.
That is perfect.
If you get distracted and suddenly anxiety rises, I got distracted, I forgot to be grateful, of course I'll feel this. But I know how to get back to my heart, my center. So I will make that decision to realign with that so I can be present again. mindfulness isn't something you arrive at, then stop working. It's that constant touching base with where your attention is. Knowing that you can bring it back anytime you want to. And there are these wonderful little practices, aligning with your breath, touching base with one of your senses. If you're in a noisy environment, like a coffee shop, Thanksgiving with your family, there's this one, I can't remember who said it, but the comment was, if you think you're enlightened, go home for Thanksgiving.
Ramdas.
Yeah, was that a Ram Dass quote? If you don't know Ram Dass, look him up. He's
How do you spell it?
Ramdass. That's his spiritual name given to him by his guru. I think Richard Alpert is his given name. Brilliant, brilliant soul. Wonderful to listen to. And one of the things that's also beautiful is he's always making reference to his guru, his Maharaji. He doesn't use I a lot. Well, I discovered this and that. He talks about just that heart-to-heart transmission from his teacher, and how being in his teacher, the presence of his teacher, was instruction. His guru didn't have to say a whole lot. He was just so present with unconditional love that being in his presence changed you. And both Ram Dass and his teacher are powerful models for showing up in a very special way and letting lives be changed by that. One more story I'll leave you with. Throughout my life, I had ADHD, dyslexia. I didn't know I had these problems. It was very hard for me to keep up in the classroom. Everybody was always catching on faster than me. Very clumsy because of my joints. I didn't play sports. It was very easy to feel I wasn't good enough, I didn't belong, I had nothing to give. But throughout my education, every now and then, a teacher or a classroom volunteer would spot the lonely little kid over in the corner who couldn't keep up. And they would come and sit next to me and give me their undivided attention. And for the time they were there, I didn't feel alone, and I felt like I mattered. And those experiences help keep me going, and also help me have a little seed of hope, because I realized if I matter to this person, then there's somebody out there that values me. Maybe there's something about me I haven't discovered yet. And it's those people that are part of what inspired me to show up powerfully for other people, so that others don't feel alone in my presence, because I know what it's like to suffer at that level, to feel alone and feel like you're not loved. So once I've discovered how to do that, I'm compelled to pay it forward. And hopefully, I've been able to do that for all of you today. Namaste.